here with my cousin, Alistair Smeaton, who's a minister. He's still with the United Reformed Church.
That's right.
I thought I would give. We've been reading Adam Hamilton's book, Incarnation.
Yeah.
So our Christmas series, Advent series, is on the Incarnation. And so this past week we talked about Jesus' royalty.
Yeah. The
idea of kings and queens. So as a person of the United Kingdom, like, are you a monarchist?
I'm not really. You know, Republican tendencies.
Right. So do you find that the younger generation, like your kids that are in their late teens?
Yeah, my kids have been indoctrinated by my Republican sympathies. I thought that was a really interesting question that you've asked. I think when I was growing up, because none of the influential royals were kind of my generation, it just seemed all very removed.
Right.
But because of how things have changed, I think Prince William and Prince Harry have kind of changed the perception a bit, and it's possible that younger people might be less cynical about the whole thing.
Right, a long time.
And it will, you know, in the context of your study, it'll be interesting to have a king, you know, because we haven't had a king for two generations.
Yeah.
So I don't know if and how that changes it. It means that the biblical metaphor is has got a more immediately earthly link, and whether that's helpful or unhelpful, time will tell.
It is interesting because you sing God Save the Queen, you don't really relate that to Jesus as king.
No, but once we start singing God Save the King, once we start singing God Save the King, and in the same service singing hymns about King Jesus, then it'd be interesting to see how the metaphor plays out.
Yeah. Jesus as king, a metaphor that you use, or do you have another one that's more your...
Well, Calvin wrote about Jesus having the three offices of prophet, priest, and king. So that's an important part of our theological heritage to understand Jesus in that way. But I do take seriously thinking over the last generation that wants us to be careful with the image of king, because if we're not careful, the metaphor, we can pick up unhelpful threads to the metaphor. The question is, can we let go of some of the human connotations of king? We've just had in the UK, well, around the world, we've just celebrated the Sunday of Christ the King. And a friend of mine preached a sermon called It's Kingship, Jim, but Not As We Know It, by which he was just trying to say, we can use this metaphor, but we have to be very careful because there's baggage about ruling from our human connections that may not apply to Jesus.
Right. Our Father who art in heaven, what is our role as subjects to the King of Heaven?
As subjects, we're called to respond and follow as best we can, aren't we? And I don't think we can necessarily we can't bring about the kingdom by our human will.
No.
But we can be, to a greater or a lesser extent, agents of it in this world, made by God, broken by pain, which we inhabit. And that's the call on our lives every day, isn't it? To be more faithful citizens of that community. Whether because I live in a country called the United Kingdom, whether that's helpful or unhelpful understanding the metaphor, whether it gives us a context and therefore a tie to it, or whether it actually holds us back and even when we don't want to, makes us think in a geographical way rather than in a more cosmic way. I also have been very affected by songs from the Iona community about Christmas.
Okay.
The Fiona community published this book about 30 years ago called Innkeepers and Light Sleepers, which is it's a collection of about a dozen or so songs and hymns and new carols for Christmas.
Oh, wow.
And I like this one. And a lot of them go to folk songs from a Scottish tradition. I like this one. Who would think that what was needed?
Okay.
So who would think that what was needed to transform and save the earth might not be a plan or army, proud in purpose, proved in worth? Who would think, despite derision, that a child would lead the way? For God surprises earth with heaven, coming here on Christmas Day.